Hey folks, welcome to Beyond the Hype, a legitimate games journalism piece about the development and marketing of some of the most hyped video games out there. Legitimate. On today's episode, we shoot for a star, hope we land on a moon, miss the moon, land in a pile of garbage, and then build a legitimate rocket ship and ascend to the stars. I am talking about No Man's Sky. Now, normally when we do this show, we follow the linear path of a game from development to release and the response and the reception. However, for this episode, we're going to have to bounce around to really look at how No Man's Sky launch was received, and no better place to start than with that delightful British developer Sean Murray. Sean Murray founded Hello Games in 2008, along with his friends Grant Duncan, Ryan Doyle, and David Ream. Sean, having had multiple different roles prior to the company's founding, including tech director at Kuju and technical lead on games like Black and Burnout 3 at Criterion Games. However, the constant work on sequels and the fact that Criterion was owned by Electronic Arts, Sean decided to take a huge risk and strike out on his own. Hello Games' first title released was Joe Danger for the PlayStation 3 in June of 2010 and the Xbox 360 the following year. The game gained favorable reception, and the title sold over 50,000 units the first week on the PlayStation Network. The success of the title prompted a sequel 2 years later, Joe Danger 2, the movie, which wasn't a movie, it was still a game, they just called it the movie. That was released on September 2012, and like most sequels, saw moderate success and saw some praise. A mobile game was also released 2 years later because that is what you do when you don't want to continue a series anymore, but still need to pay employees. Now keep in mind, Sean Murray created his own studio because he was tired of big companies churning out sequels over and over, and now he found himself doing the same thing. According to Murray, the release of Joe Danger 2 caused him to have a little bit of a midlife crisis. This caused him to start working on an ambitious new title called No Man's Sky. The Video Game Awards show of 2013 was the first time we would see anything about this new title. The trailer showed off gorgeous worlds promising that everything from even the smallest atom was procedural, and at any given point you can hop in a spaceship and explore worlds beyond count. The following year at E3, we see Sean Murray take the stage during Sony's press conference and show more of the ambitious title. Murray talked about the game being infinite, and no two players having the same experience. The following 2 years saw Murray doing press junkets and even going on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert to talk up the game. During this time, the press grabbed hold of everything the lead developer said to talk about all the features that would be in the game, from crafting to multiplayer, to being able to name planets and creatures you find, and even adopt the life of a modest space trader, to even taking the role of a space pirate. No Man's Sky released on August 6, 2016, 2 months after the initial release date of June 2016. This small delay did cause a lot of outrage among gamers, including death threats, because why wouldn't you? That's what we do apparently as gamers. This caused Sean to get Scotland Yard involved. Also, a couple copies of the game got released early, with one copy selling on eBay for $1,300. This prompted gag orders by Sony on people who were reporting and streaming the game. So was this pioneering space title promising of space exploration and limitless planets going to live up to the hype? Unfortunately not, at first. The game was a bug-riddled mess with crashes, creatures on planets glitching out, spaceships just leaving people on planets, planet textures glitching out, and falling through planets. And if you pre-ordered the special edition of the game, you got a special ship that already had a hyperdrive in it. That's good. The bad thing, however, was that part of the tutorial of the game was building a hyperdrive, and if your ship already had one, you couldn't build another one, so you were just stuck on the planet you spawned into the game on. Game critics and streamers collectively piled on the title, and making fun of how bad the game was became an internet standard. Also, all those promised features that Murray had spent 2 years claiming were in the game were nowhere to be seen. No multiplayer being the one people were most outraged about. However, this isn't where the story ends. Let's go back to Sean Murray for a bit. While the game did grab a lot of attention at the VGAs in 2013, it was E3 2014 showing of No Man's Sky that I believe got people really excited. Keep in mind, this is a small team working on the title. Even now, at the time of recording, there's only 20 people working for Hello Games, so no marketing team. In fact, the deal they had with releasing the game on the PlayStation 4 with Sony was just them helping with marketing. Sony didn't buy into the company, meaning that Sean and his team have complete control over the game and what they can do with it. So Sean Murray going on stage and talking about the game happened because they literally didn't have anyone else who knew the specs of the title as well as Sean did. And Sean Murray has regularly said that he hates speaking in front of people. However, he likes making games and is passionate about what he makes, so he hopped on stage and people loved him. You gotta understand, at this point in gaming, most people can smell BS corporate jargon coming from a mile away. And a lot of that is seen at these expos. A lot of developers get on stage and say rehearsed speeches with gameplay and trailers that focus on what the marketing team wants to stress to get people excited to pre-order the super fancy editions that are almost never worth it. So when Sean Murray, in his adorable, introverted, British, Irish, Australian accent, stumbled over words and looked to the floor, but still spoke from his heart about the love of this title and how the reception of the game so far had absolutely floored him, people saw something we don't normally see in the gaming industry: honesty. In all the interviews, Sean would talk about the features, not sure if they would actually make it into the final product, but fans saw it and clung to every bit of new information they could grab. However, as the deadline got closer, Sean and his development team had to cut more and more things in order to get the game out by the release window. This was not helped by the media at the time, who reported on every hesitant yes that came out of Sean's mouth as confirmation, so they could report on it so Monster Energy Drink could keep buying ad space on their page. I think I just accidentally made fun of IGN again. And Monster. Yeah, maybe. All right, if I had my dry erase board, I could mark off another thing. Oh, I don't think Monster would be too insulted by that. They'd be like, yeah, that's what we do. We want you fat, weird, basement-dwelling nerds just chugging down our energy drink, shortening your lifespan by a year every time you have one. All right. Murray, while speaking at GDC 2019, said, "The press operates downstream from the community," meaning that with most gaming journalism websites rely on clicks to operate, and as the fan base of No Man's Sky turned negative, so too would the press turn negative to adhere to what the loudest part of the public had to say. After the very tough and dramatic release of No Man's Sky, Sean Murray stopped relying on the press as a means to communicate to the public and went straight to the public themselves. For 3 months after release, Murray had every email, tweet, Reddit post, every sort of comment about No Man's Sky go directly to his computer, not as a means to get a daily dose of internet anger and hatred, but to take it in as data for improving the game. And this is off script. You gotta admire that. Like, just hopping on Twitter and doom scrolling takes a toll on me, and none of it's about me. And so the fact that this guy just took every awful thing that anybody could say about this game that he had put so much heart and soul into, and he just took it and he just made it into data that he could use. This is another boon to Murray's character. Where most other developers would have taken the money from the flopped release and either disappeared forever or turned around and used it on another title of which would already be tarnished because of their actions, Sean Murray soaked in all the hostile and toxic things the internet could say about his game and used it as a means to improve it. While Sean suffered the barbed words of people who had mouthful of bagel bites and a computer chair growing out the back of their heads, his team was set to work to make No Man's Sky the game they had promised it to be. During this 3 months, not a lot of word came from Hello Games, short of their Twitter getting hacked. It was so much so that everybody thought they had just taken the money and run. Nobody really, they thought oh, we're not hearing anything, so this game's just dead. Then, in November of 2016, seemingly out of nowhere, a new update to the game was released called the Foundation Update, which featured base building on planets, being able to buy and use space freighters as mobile bases, improvements to inventory, and a lot of other gameplay improvements. This is all stuff that came from him taking in all that toxic vitriol that was thrown at him, and he just took it and he said, okay, people don't like this, well then we fix this. Then, in March of 2017, another patch was released, this time called the Pathfinder Update, which added vehicles to be used to explore planets easier and a permadeath mode for hardcore players. One more patch for 2017 was released in August called Atlas Rises. This time we saw additions to the story, which added about 30 hours of narrative and even included a limited online multiplayer mode called Joint Exploration, which allowed up to 16 players to explore a planet together. Then, in July of 2018, No Man's Sky released its biggest patch up to that point. Titled No Man's Sky Next, it brought in proper multiplayer and online servers, in addition to seeing the game released on the Xbox. The next 2 patches, The Abyss and Visions, saw an increase of different biomes for people to explore on different planets, including underwater areas and aquatic vehicles and base building. Then on August 14th, 2019, almost 3 years after the game's disastrous launch, the Beyond patch was released. This patch increased base building customizations, an overhaul to the multiplayer aspect of the game, and even added VR across all available VR devices. Oh, and all these patches, completely free. That's unheard of in this industry. Anybody else, looking at you, EA, would have made each one of these worth anywhere from $5 to $20. Him? No, free. It was him fixing this game that he originally wanted it to be. Opinions on the game over the last couple years has changed completely. Steam reviews jumped from largely negative to overwhelmingly positive. Sales for the game picked back up, and while sales figures are tough to find, it is estimated that since its launch in 2016, the game has made $67 million. And since being available on the Xbox, has seen an addition of 1 million new players. It is easy to look at the launch of No Man's Sky and focus on the negative. While some people still look at the game as a group of unqualified developers conning the innocent gaming populace out of a bunch of money and hyping up a game that had no hope at all of delivering on its promises. But to do that would be missing out on the greater story of a man who looked at the industry and saw heartless sequels being churned out for the sake of profit and decided to try something new. He had dreams of playing a game inspired by the sci-fi writers he grew up reading and wanted to see something new, something with heart and soul. I'm not excusing Sean Murray for the disastrous launch of No Man's Sky. I am, however, extremely impressed at the devotion of Murray and his team to stick by their title and jump back into the grind to make the game they set out to make all along. So what's Sean Murray and the crew at Hello Games up to now? While updates at No Man's Sky are still regularly released, also they released the small indie title The Last Campfire, which focuses on environmental puzzle solving to help forlorn souls. Also, a new game, which at this time, Sean Murray is keeping tight-lipped about until they are ready to present it to the world, which is completely understandable, all things considered. Sean Murray and Hello Games is a refreshing take on the games industry. Even if No Man's Sky's hype caused the game to crash and burn, the fact that it rose from the shattered wreckage and became even bigger than what it initially promised to be in the first place, which is just something you do not see in the gaming industry. And in honor of Sean Murray and the amazing team at Hello Games, I'm going to end this show with threatening to throw a trash can at my brother, screw that up, and then do something even better.